about allocation, apportionment, reapportionment. Then we started with discussing about computation of overhead rate. The concept here, what you have to understand here is, if there are three departments like Department A, Department B, Department C, in that case, each department will be having separate category of expenses which needs to be absorbed, which needs to be charged to the particular unit of production. How many units, that depends on that particular department. So every department, sometimes same product. Say for example, you can imagine that some of you might have traveled to a tea factory, tea manufacturing factory. There you might have seen that the first stage is drying the leaves. No, selecting, categorizing and all. You are doing that. Then drying the leaves. Then that is being made into dust. Then you are filtering, then you are packing it. Finally, you are bringing that as a final product with all aspects like retail price, all these with the brand cover, covering package, all these. So when I'm looking at the process involved, there are many departments. The first department may be looking at collecting the good leaves, categorizing and picking the good ones which could be used for tea manufacturing. The second department might be thinking about drying that. They have machine. Nowadays, all this drying process is done through machine. So second department can do with that. And the third department may be doing with mixing this and minting this, or maybe producing tea dust. And then the next would be filtering, finally packing, and then you are going with your distribution wing. So all these are separate departments, and all these departments would be having their own cost. Right. Now, at the final stage, as we know, overhead costing is nothing but it is a combination of all indirect expenses, indirect labor, indirect what is the material cost, and also indirect sort of expenses. That's the total of overhead. That's what we have been discussing from the beginning. Now, each of these departments will have their own cost, which needs to be absorbed into the final product. In our example, as a packet of tea, maybe one packet of tea, which is 500 grams. So we need to include all the costs incurred by the, starting from the first department of collecting the tea leaves, second the categorizing department, drying department. All these would be having their own cost, which needs to be finally totaled to the final product called one packet of tea, 500-gram tea packet. Right. So that is the process, or that is where we discuss about the absorption of overhead, computation of overhead rate. What should be the rate at which each packet should be charged with that particular department's expense. That's what we are doing now. The last stage in overhead accounting. Right. So when we are doing this, we need to compute the overhead rate. That's what we were telling in the last class, we were discussing in the last class. Computation of overhead rate and also absorption of this into the final product cost. Right. And once we had discussed many methods in the last classes, but we said machine hour rate, computation of machine hour rate, or machine hour rate is the most common method which we use for finding out the overhead rate or overhead absorption rate. The rate which is to be charged to each unit of production. So you can imagine, because it might be very difficult for you to bring out the need for this stage if you cannot follow from the beginning. So that's why I repeated that we are going with the overhead accounting process. We finally computed the overhead cost of different departments. Now this needs to be charged to the final output. In the example which we discussed in our today's class, we were talking about the tea manufacturing factory which is involved in tea manufacturing. Okay, so the final product, what is expected is packets of tea. different weights, different types, different varieties. If you have gone into the tea factory, you can see that there are different types depending upon the quality of leaves which they have used and the process involved in drying and maybe categorizing. All these are being considered when they are packing it into different varieties. Each of this will be having different cost which needs to be attached to the final product. So in today's class, we are going to discuss about the machine hour rate. Now, machine hour rate, in simple terms, it's nothing but the total expense, total overhead expense, factory overhead divided by machine hours. It is a cost involved in using machine or cost involved in finding out or the expenses connected with working of machine per hour. Per hour. So that's why we say that it is machine hour rate, hourly rate of expenses connected with working of a particular machine. Now, why do we say machine? We are always referring to a production setup. So I repeat, machine hour rate is one of the method which we use for finding out the absorption rate or finding out the overhead rate which is to be charged to the particular unit. It can be a packet in our example as we were discussing. It can be might be one unit. Say last class I was talking about the pen, the cost of one unit of pen. One pen, right? So likewise, and when we classify the computation of machine hour rate, it can be broadly classified into two. Okay, the simplest is ordinary machine hour rate computation, and the second one is composite machine hour rate combined. I'll tell you what is combined in that. The first one is very simple as just looking at the broad, the macro perspective of what are the charges that can contribute to working of this machine. But in case of the combined one, the composite one, we include all the minute expenses that are associated with recording or that are associated with manufacturing of a particular unit of production. Now, I'll show you a specimen which will help you to understand that. This is the formula, of course, ordinary machine expenses. According to the first method, it's nothing but total of machine expenses by total hours worked by machine for that particular department. If I'm going to compute the machine hour rate for department A, it would be how many hours that machine has been worked or it had worked for department A. Same as the case with department B. It goes like that. So this is actually the specimen for computation of machine hour rate. In this, we can see that there are two categories, standing charges, and we will also talk about the machine expense. Standing charges is general expenses. General expenses which are related to this particular department. Say, for example, if I have a building that we have already learned when we were looking for the overhead accounting. Say, for example, if I'm talking about the rent for the whole building, I will take the floor space that the expense or the rent of this floor space that belongs to that particular department. I look only to that angle. I'll take the expense of only department A. So that is what we call as the apportionment, proportional allocation of expenses to that particular department. So first one is standing charge. Standing charges, those charges that are general in nature, not related to this particular machine, but it is part of total cost. That will be included under the first part, that is standing charges. Whether you operate the machine or not, these expenses will be incurred. Whether I function or manufacture the goods or not, these expenses in the normal cases would be incurred by the firm. Those are brought under the category of standing charges. Example, you can see in front of you, which includes rent, lighting, insurance, salary component of manager or supervisor. All these will be put as standing charges. And you can see that we go with hourly computation. So initially, so standing charges, even though we put it as per annum or per month, later we convert that into per hour. That is by dividing the number of hours the machine has worked for that particular department. That will be given in the question. Now, the second part, what we would be looking is those expenses which are very much related to the working of that particular machine. If that machine is not working, these expenses will not be incurred. Such expenses are called as machine expenses, which include the depreciation, the wear and tear of the machine, maybe the repairing part, maybe the other requirement for functioning like power, oil, or maybe the lubricant. All that is required for functioning of the machine. So we can say that some of the factories require like machine belt. If you have visited a factory, you will know that, which is required for running these machines. All that will be related to that particular machine expenses, which will, the thing which you have to remember is these expenses will be incurred only when the machine is functioning. That is just opposite for standing expenses. Standing expenses would be there in any case, whether the machine work or not, that would be there. So likewise, we will classify the statement showing the computation of machine hour rate into two parts. The first part is standing charges. Second part is, the first part is standing charges, and the second part is those which is related to the machine expenses. So that is the categorization which we would be doing with the computation of machine hour rate. Now I'm just going to show you an example which will make it clear for you. For example, in this question we can see that we are asked to compute the machine hour rate from the following information, right? Cost of machine, freight and installation charges, working life of machine. We can easily guess that these are given for computation of depreciation. Why? Cost of machine is needed for computation of depreciation. Installation charges would be added with the cost of machine when we are going with the computation of depreciation. And the scrap, which is given towards the end, that will be deducted from the existing cost to find out what is the actual expense connected with that machine, which will be divided by the number of years for finding out the depreciation. So those information, seeing itself, we can understand it is for computation of the depreciation. Then the second part talks about how many hours the machine has worked for this particular department. The department which we are referring here. That is, in this question, it is said that 2,200 hours per year. Right. So that is total machine hours which we needed for computation of per hour. Then going with the first lubricating oil at 2 per day. Of course, we know that this is an expense that can be related to particular machine, functioning of machine. So it has been for 2 per hour. It is used for 8-hour expense being incurred. Then the next is consumable stores. There also you're given with what is the expense, 8 per day of 8 hours, right? Per day of 8 hours. So it is hourly. That's why it is expressed in hour. Then salary of foreman, they said it is 1/4 for the machine, for this particular machine. Total expenses 2,640, but for this particular machine of which we are computing, that is incurred as 1/4 of that. It may be used for another purpose also. The foreman may be for department A, department B, department C. He should be common for. So for this particular machine, it is 1/4. So we will have to compute it from that figure. Power, of course, 10 units per hour at 10 pies, which we have to multiply. Rent of the department, which we know, which is a standing charge. So that they have kept as 1/5 for this particular machine, and it is 550 per year. So initially we will go with per year, per annum, then we will go with finding out the per unit aspect. Repair charges, it is 50% of depreciation. This is the question. Now looking at the question itself, we can categorize these expenses into standing as well as machine expenses. Let's see how that is being done. See, standing charges, there were only 2 standing charges, which we know that. What were the salary of the foreman, which was given in the question, salary of the foreman, which is 1/4 of 2,640 per annum. So we computed 2,640 into 1/4, which gave us 660. Rent, which was given in the question, which is 1/5 for this particular machine, which we are computing. It's a standing charge. So it is 150 for this particular machine. So what did we do? 550 into 1/5, which gives us the standing charge for computation of machine hour rate for this particular machine. Okay. So that's what being done, 550 into 1/5, which gave us a total of 770 per annum. Now we know that we are going to compute machine hour rate per hour. Machine hour rate. That's why hourly rate of working of each of this machine. That's what we are trying to find out. So what we do, we will convert it into hourly rate. Now it was given in our question that the working hours of this machine for an year is 2,200 hours. Things are very easy. How do we convert it? The total expenses by total expense. We know that is expressed in an annum per annum. So converting that into hour is nothing but total expenses divided by total hours worked in a year. So it would be 770 by 2,200, which gives us an answer of 0.35. So the first part is okay. Standing charges we computed. Now we know the second part of our format. This format which I have seen. First part is clear. We cleared with. So standing charges per hour would be 0.35. Now we have to go with part B, which is computation of machine expenses. Now we know that machine expenses very much specific to that particular machine. If that machine is not operating, we will not be charged with machine expenses. But in this case, it is there. We are given with information for computing machine expenses. So what do? We will go with computation of machine expenses. Now, depreciation, we had been doing this from the beginning, right? We had been doing this. How do we go with the depreciation? Either there are two ways. Sometimes in the question, they will give directly what is depreciation expense for this particular machine. But in this question, they have not given us. But we can understand by looking at the details given here, we can understand that the machine depreciation needs to be computed from the data given, because cost of machine is given, the installation charges is being given, and the life of the machine is also given. So naturally it will be cost plus installation charges. And they have said that there is some scrap value which can be got by selling the machine after the usage. That's what compute machine hour for the following machine, the scrap value of which is estimated to be 2,000. So that's a gain. So that we will reduce from the total cost of the machine. Same method we have been using in accounting also. So cost of machine plus freight and installation charges minus scrap, right, which will give us the actual cost of that machine divided by number of years. We will get the depreciation, which is again converted into per hour. That's all we have done here. We got the value as 3. Now, in the question, they had said repairs is 50% of depreciation. It's just a mathematical calculation. We already computed depreciation. So 50% of that will give us as the repairs. The next part which they had given in the question is lubricating oil, which is used for the effective functioning of this machine. So that they have said it is used as 2 per day of 8 hours. So we want hourly rate. So what we will do, 2 by per day, it is 8 hours. So we want per hour rate. So 2 by 8, which gives us 0.25. And consumer stores also same way. Power also we are given that per hour. It is 10 rupees 10. I mean not rupees 10, 10 paise. So we have used 10 units. The total cost would be, total hourly cost would be 10 units into 0.10 because it is 10 paise. So it would be 10 units into 0.10, which gives us 1. So we get the machine hour rate. Now how do we get? We total the machine expenses plus the standing charges. Totally we will get the machine hour rate. So this is as simple as that. To summarize, what you have to understand here is, for computation of machine hour rate, we go with 2 aspects. Yeah, now you might want to ask then what we had been doing from the beginning, like charging it to different departments. The same thing which we are showing here for the computation of machine hour rate. It is charge to be done to each machine for its hourly working, or the cost incurred for the hourly working of a particular machine for the production of a unit. If we're talking about one packet of tea, which is of 500 grams. So how much should be the cost of each department that needs to be charged to this 500 grams of tea packet? That's what we are going from computation of cost, charging it on a basis of hourly. It's not compulsory that always we have to go with hourly rate. There can be different other ways, like totally you can, if the units are identical in all the perspective, total we will go with charging it finally to the cost. That can be done. It's not compulsory that every time we have to go with computation of machine hour rate, but we are learning this method of machine hour rate, hourly charging of expenses, charging of cost to the particular unit of production. So that includes two stages. One is computation of the standing charges, which will be incurred by this particular machine, whether it is operated or not, which is our general charges. Like for example, if you say the insurance, maybe we will also talk about the salary of the supervisor, salary of the watchman, or the insurance being taken for the factory as a whole. All these would be part of that. Then second part is that which is related with the particular machine, the expenses connected with that particular machine. So these are the two charges, and we have just looked into how do we go with the computation. So I just show you the format once more. In the format, you can see that there are two parts. The first part which talks about standing charges, second part which talks about machine expenses. And you also know that since we have to go with hourly computation, per annum or per month need to be ultimately converted into per hour. It's not always compulsory that standing charges, first we go with the annum, then conversion into hourly rate. It's not compulsory, but we are just simplifying our calculation by initially computing the standing charges for an annum or for a month or maybe for a week, and then we convert that into a hourly rate. But it depends upon the pattern of question which you get for your exam. In this particular case, it's given as annum. So we convert that into hour at a later stage. So this is how we go with computation of machine hour rate. We said there are two methods. First is simple method. We consider only the standing basic charges which is related to the machine. Second one is the one which we use for all the calculation, which is extended one, which combines both the standing as well as the machine related expenses. So these are the two parts of computation of machine hour rate, right? And as I said, it is part of computation of the rate which is to be charged to each product when we decide the final cost. Okay, that's it. Now, if you have some doubt related with that, you can ask me. Anything